Welcome, ladies and gents, maybe just gents, to the Better Man Podcast. I'm your host, Colin Stuckert. We're going to talk today about an intro to thinking as a better man. What is the better man mindset? This show is all about helping men live their truth, become leaders in their communities, their families, civilly disobey if needed, stand up to what's right. Because a lot of the trends in 2021 are not looking good for my son's future. Where I think I can have the biggest impact is helping other men live flourishing lives of sovereignty, of independence, of free thinking. You know, get men rich, get them happy, get them healthy, get them thinking for themselves, and then let them into the wild, see what happens. That's my strategy for making the future a better place. So today we're going to talk about the better man mindset, how to think better, how to think with the first principles mindset, the foundation of everything, which is the growth mindset. We're going to also cover fragility, robust and anti-fragile, and the stoic framework of control, which directs everything. If you're a woman listening to this and you happen to stumbled in here for some reason, you should still listen because I think it's going to be useful. These are obviously genderless principles. These are principles of how to think, and I might obviously use examples for men because the show is the better man after all, but these are universal principles for life. So let's just think about, like, what is that ideal man? Now, for you listening, maybe picture that yourself. What do you envision yourself being? Like, when you see yourself getting angry or emotional or breaking things or just otherwise engaging in weak man behavior, do you reflect on that later on and kind of cringe? Like, what was I thinking? What was I doing? And then maybe as a counterpoint to that, or what follows from that, would be visualizing how you would be if you were living your ideal, as the ideal man in your mind. What would he look like? What would he do? What would he say? Now, for me, he's stoic, but not the way most people think as stoic. Most people think stoic means deadpan, unhappy. That's not actually what it means, but we won't get into that. He'll be joyful. He'll laugh and smile and have a good time and be playful. And he'll turn into a fucking killer in a second if he's provoked and that it's needed. But not because you just piss him off, because he has control over his emotions. He doesn't get angry just to get angry. It actually takes quite a bit to make him angry. But in a life or death situation, you don't want to be in the same room as him. He's a survivor. He's a killer. If that's what it takes, that's what happens. Now, in our PC culture, you know, even the idea of saying somebody's a killer or whatever, they might have a problem with that. I don't fucking care about that. We don't got time for that shit. The reality is, in a life and death situation, and for me, my perspective is always family, right? I'm protecting my family. But in a life and death situation, if you're coming after my family in any way, I'm going to fucking kill you, is what it is. I'm going to say those things that I hope deep down you feel the same, because you should protect your friends and family with your life, if that's what it takes. That's what a man does. I mean, that's really what any human should do, really, but especially men. But we don't want to go there. We don't like violence, but we can be violent. And you could even say we are violent creatures. Men are violent. I mean, women are violent too. I've seen some shit. We just pretend we're not. And we live in this fragile PC culture where everyone thinks that because you can call 911 or the police that you're safe or whatever, even though most of the time the police or the ambulance shows up after things have transpired. I don't really know where the sense of security comes from. A lot of why people run their mouth behind a screen is because there isn't a threat of violence. You do that in person, you're going to get what you deserve. Violence kept their ancestors in check for hundreds of thousands of years. This is just biology. You fuck around the animal kingdom, you'll be killed. The group will gang up on you. They'll tear you to shreds. I mean, all animal species. Violence is a necessary means at keeping behavior in check. This is just nature. So again, that ideal man for me, he can be a violent motherfucker. He doesn't want to be. He wants to prevent that at all costs. So don't construe what I'm saying here. The ideal man, he's joyful. He laughs and plays. He has a good time. And he can be a ruthless killer at a moment's notice if need be. So that's my vision of the ideal man. He's hard. He's resourceful. You don't want to upset him or piss him off. Now, I guess upset might be not the right word, because he doesn't actually get easily upset. He lets things bounce off of him. He has that stoic calm, that stoic resolve. But you should never mistake his passivity for weakness, because that could be a grave mistake. Now, as it applies to the mind, you don't respond to petty things in your environment. You don't get angry and yell and curse at people in traffic, because you should be above that. That should be your ideal of the better man. That ideal man in your mind is so far beyond that he just looks at you. He doesn't even respond, no facial expression, and then he looks away. He doesn't need to play ego games, status games. He doesn't need to prove himself to you. You can say and do all you want, flip him off in traffic, whatever. It's not worth his time. Those people are pathetic. They're not worth his time. That same kind of mindset applies to everything. He doesn't waste time on drama, gossip, negativity. He'll change the subject. If he can, he'll leave the room. He'll fire toxic people from his life and those that are always engaged in drama. He just doesn't have time for it. And he'll be straight with it. He'll be like, I just don't have time for this. If we can't talk about something else, we're going to have to stop talking. He thinks in first principles, which I'm going to unpack. He's got the growth mindset, which I'm going to unpack. He understands the difference between fragility, robust, and anti-fragile, and he tries to be as anti-fragile as he can in his life. And then he understands what he can control, which is his response to the environment. That's the only thing he can control. He can't make people do things. He can't make people think or feel things. He can try to persuade them, but he's detached from the outcome because he knows he can't actually make anybody do or think anything. So let's start with first principles, okay? First principles. You think down to the baseline things we know for sure. That becomes the foundation that you build on top of for everything. Mathematics, physics, certain situation in your business or your relationship. What are the facts here? What are the facts that you can build on top of? Now, most people get muddied down into their thinking by talking about hypotheticals, what ifs, and maybes, things that they don't know for sure. And then they build on top of that these really weak arguments and this kind of roundabout, winding logic flow that doesn't work, it makes no sense, and it just ends up in bickering nonsense. It doesn't actually get anywhere. To be a first principles thinker, you let go of all that. You actively say, no, I'm not going to even go there because I'm going to go down to the things I know for sure. I'm going to build on top of those. It's amazing how many things that you can resolve at the root rather than up in the leaves or at the top of the tree. I do this in business all the time. We had a multi-hour meeting plan for customer service. We were going to change all these things. We're going to talk about how we need to do training on this, training on that, whatever. And I just said, you know what? Let's think of first principles here. Let's ask ourselves, what things could we change or remove completely that would solve all of those problems so we don't even have to deal with them? And there was a very easy question. It was get rid of this piece of software and have our 3PL, or third-party logistics company, which is what we were transferring to, and it was causing some complexities, get them to do all of our orders instead of this half thing where we do some of the orders, they do some of them. Because what we were trying to do is we were trying to get the new team trained and the 3PL trained and have all these complex procedures for how to do certain things for some of our orders that were going through this one piece of software, ShipStation, and then their internal software, which is the 3PL, what they manage. And so we were going to try to fit these together and had all these training materials and guides and all this whatever. I was like, how can we just not do that? And then I asked, okay, how are the other brands doing this? Everything goes through the 3PL. That's it. It's very simple. Then I asked, okay, so how are we doing it? Why are we not doing it the same way as them? Oh, well, we sell on eBay and Etsy and other things. Okay, what if we didn't sell on eBay or Etsy? I mean, it doesn't generate that much revenue, but let's just say hypothetically we turn that off for a period of time. Or can they integrate with them? Well, maybe, yeah, I think they can. Let's just talk to them about that. Okay, great. So we don't need to spend any time about all this hypothetical training, customer service, and all these procedures. Let's figure out if we can just get the 3PL doing everything like the other brands. And that's actually exactly what we're doing right now. We're working towards that end. And it saved us a mountain of time and ongoing effort. So instead of my team in Austin having to deal with a lot of these customer service issues that would come up with these other platforms, and we're still in the weeds doing certain things with certain orders, we give it all to them and they take care of everything. That's an example of first principles thinking. Most people start in the cloud and they start with things that they think are accepted or the norm, or, they reason by analogy, as Elon Musk likes to say, which is basically you reason by what do other people do? What is the status quo? What does society say? Let's start there. Musk says, don't do that. Ignore that. Go to the bottom, like the baseline, the foundation. What's there? Pick that apart. Run your situation or problem through that lens, and then see how you can eliminate things completely or completely focus on something else and get a different outcome or whatever. When you're a first principles thinker, you try to cut down to the root. You have to be patient with this. And if you're dealing with people that don't know how to do this, like, you have to be very patient and you have to continually ask them, penetrating questions like, okay, well, what if this? Or, well, what are the things we know for sure? That's one bucket. What are the things that might be or maybe? That's one bucket. And then what are the things we're unsure of and we have no data whatsoever and we're just guessing? That's bucket 3. Now, bucket 3 should go immediately because you don't know, you don't have data, so stop talking about it. A lot of people love talking about what ifs and maybes, and they love to plan things and talk about what might happen. It's such a fucking waste of time. It's incredible. You see it all the time, though, in boardrooms and whatever. Then you have the maybes, the things that, like, you might have a little bit of data, but, you throw in other complexities or other things, and the data changes. There's just still a lot of uncertainty with the maybe. And usually there's not a ton of data to really support it. Maybe it's a few things or a few bits of feedback or whatever. Let that go. Go to the things you know for sure. What are the things you're trying to do? And this is where you actually get into goals. So what you want to also do with this is after you get to that point, you get down to the things you know for sure. You ask yourself, what are our goals here? What am I trying to accomplish? A lot of times, whatever you've done thus far, if you re-ask yourself the question, what are my goals? And you figure out what you're doing right now. And then you ask yourself, well, what if I dropped everything I've done thus far? I don't fall victim to sunk cost fallacy, which is like just focusing on things we've already done. What if I just looked at this with the new, fresh set of eyes? And then what if I did something completely different to get to that goal? What we get bogged down with is we get into all these murky buckets and all these maybes, what ifs, whatever, things we've already done, sunk costs. And we don't ask ourselves, like, what are we trying to accomplish here? We're trying to accomplish this. Okay. Is there a faster way? Is there a shortcut? Is there a different way? When you can think this way consistently, it'll change your life. You'll make better decisions. You'll be more confident in your decisions. And that is a hallmark of the better man. He doesn't claim to always be right, but he's at least thought through his decisions. He's kept them as simple as possible. And what's crazy about it is he's right most of the time because he doesn't commit to anything if he isn't focused on the principles. This is how you can be right most of the time. Now, I said most. I didn't say always. I said most of the time. You can be right way more often than other people. Now, you combine that with a little bit of pivoting and adjusting and listening to data, and you're unstoppable. The first principles thinker, the better man that thinks from first principles, makes better decisions than everyone else that does not use the same strategy, period. That brings us to growth mindset. The growth mindset, coined by Carol Dweck in her book, Mindset, is somebody that makes the connection that if they invest time and energy, that they will get a better outcome. They believe they can learn. They believe it's not just set in genetic stone. The fixed mindset, by contrast, is usually something along the lines of, well, I'm just not good at math. And that creates this negative reinforcement where the person gives up their locus of control because they don't think they can change it because they're just not good at math. So why even try? And they end up getting worse and worse and worse. And it calcifies to this point where they're never going to be good at math until they break that fixed spell. Now, this applies to everything in life, not just math, everything, relationships, your abilities, sports, fitness, everything that you do. There's two ways to approach it. Growth, as in, I need to invest time and energy. I need to continually learn and get better, and I'll get better results. Or fixed. I'm just this way. There's nothing I can do about it. I might as well not even try. Or I'll just stay in this little comfortable area, this little kiddie pool area that I'm used to, and I won't ever venture out of this. I'm going to do whole shows in this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this now. If you leave this podcast or video today, please start paying attention to your mindset around things in your life. Ask yourself, do you have a growth perspective on this, or do you have a fixed? And for every single itty bitty fixed perspective you have on everything, try to kill it and destroy it. Try to destroy it and replace it with some kind of growth. I can work on this. I have power. If I want to improve, I got to take action. Bam. Fragility, robust, and anti-fragile. Okay, so these are three. You know what? I'm not going to talk about these today. I did a whole show with Armando on these on the Better Human podcast. I'll link to that below. I will also expand on that. So let's kind of save that for a future episode. If you haven't read Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb and Black Swan and Fooled by Randomness, I mean, actually most of his books you should read, even though the guy's kind of a twat. And I don't like saying that about anybody, but watching him on Twitter during the pandemic and a lot of his really bad ideas and falling victim to a lot of biases as somebody who writes books about not falling victim to them, just, you know, he really came out as a hypocrite in 2020, 2021. But whatever, humans are fallible creatures. I'm still going to learn from him. I'm still going to recommend his books. Whatever. Read Anti-Fragile. It's one of my favorite books. We are going to finish the show with the Stoic Framework of Control. Okay? The Stoic Framework of Control. If you get really into depth into Stoicism, it's actually the dichotomy of control that is kind of the concept. And, you know, it gets a little muddy and a little bit philosophical. Stoicism is very practical. It's probably the most practical philosophy there is. And I've identified as a Stoic for years now. Okay. I recommend most of Ryan Holiday's work, even though, again, he was a twat in 2020 as well. A lot of my favorite authors went full-blown lose your mind, fear-mongering morons in 2020. But I will still recommend their books because I get value from their books, and you probably will as well. The man and the idea, they're not the same. You got to separate them. That's the mark of a better man. Okay. The Stoic Framework of Control, my point is I coined this for simplicity. It's the most foundational thing in your life, pretty much. I mean, literally, it's the most foundational thing in your life. Any life. This is not just men. The framework of control is, what can I control? Okay. That's the first question you have to ask. There's a lot of examples with that we can get into. There are some things that get murky. I'll do my best to explain that. But then you also have, what do I want to achieve? And so this is where goals come in again. Most people that fall victim to emotions is they get hung up on things. It removes their agency. It removes that locus of control, which is a huge important thing for feeling like you have control of your life. They get so hung up on how could this person do this or that, or the unfairness, or really the victimhood mindset is what they get sucked into. It's very intoxicating to be a victim, right? There's status to be had, especially in 2021. If you're the victim, you have status, basically. It's a power game. It feels good to blame other people as if, you couldn't help it. Somebody did this to you and the world is acting to you. Well, as a better man, I dictate my reality. The world isn't happening to me. And if really bad things even happen to me, it's still my responsibility to respond to it, to try to stick to my goals. When you get into victimhood, you forget what your goals are and you become so addicted to being the victim that you wake up one day and you're like, why am I making myself miserable? Because I want to be miserable. I want to be the victim. I actually don't want to be miserable. My goals are to be happy and wealthy and healthy and have good relationships or whatever. You can't be the victim and also achieve that goal though. That's the thing. Most people want the goals of a better life. Most men especially. They want to feel good about themselves. They want to be needed. They want a legacy. They want to make money. They want to have time and freedom. They want to have relationships. They want most of the things that we all want, like those human needs. But there's so many hurdles in the way to getting there. And there's so many bad narratives in our modern culture that basically brainwash men. I mean, they brainwash everybody, but especially men, I feel like. The Stoic framework of control is a way to think in first principles. It removes all that. It says, what can you control? Okay, you can't control what happens around you. You can try to influence it, but even then, if you try to influence something around you, are you controlling it? No, you're not. Because the universe, people, nature, whatever's around you can respond in whatever way it wants. You can't actually control the response you get. So you focus on what you can control. Okay, I can experiment more. I can try different things. I can do this, whatever. I can do things to try to get the response I want. But if you actually take it even further than that, what you really want to do is you want to become indifferent to the outcome. If you know that the best course of action for this thing is to respond this way, which maybe it's not responding at all, maybe it's not getting angry, maybe it's just ignoring, turning the other cheek. If that's the best response, you are immediately removing yourself from any outcome. You don't want revenge. You don't want that person to get what they deserve. You literally know that your best response is non-response, so you don't respond. That's something you can control. And you do that because it gets you to your goals. Your goals are to return to a baseline of mental equanimity, which is calmness, fortitude. You don't want to be disturbed. You don't want a random person to cut you off in traffic to ruin your day. You don't want to become emotional and angry and all the bad places that can take you. Your goal is to return to that place that you were before this thing happened. So you drop the victimhood, you drop the blame. You don't have any time for that kind of nonsense because it doesn't get you to the goal of living a better life and being a better man. Better men are not victims. They have full agency and control over their lives and their reality. The Stoic framework of control is a constant because we have to always be asking ourselves, what can I control in the situation? What can I control in the situation? And usually it's some form of action that we can take. A lot of times it's no action though. A lot of times doing nothing is the best action. That's Wu Wei. That's action through an action, a Taoist concept that we'll cover later. Other times it might be doing something, writing a letter and not sending it. Go hit the punching bag, blow some steam a little bit, go take a run. Give it a week and then talk to the person that's part of it and, share how you feel calmly, not emotionally, not accusingly, calmly. And then when you figure out what that best course of action is, you actually let all the angst go and all the anger because you know what you need to do and you focus on that. That's why this is so integral to your whole life, everything you do. The question, every single decision you make, what to buy, what not to buy, where to go, what not to, how to spend your time, etc. You have to ask yourself, what can I control and what are my goals? You cannot control people. You cannot control results from the external world. You can't shape nature to your will. You can't control whether your business is successful or not, at least not in a way of forcing. You can do work and you can continually learn and you can kind of find success. Yeah. But that's still not really controlling it. And anything could happen. You can't control whether a comet strikes Earth tomorrow and blows up America. Like, who knows what could happen? So you don't spend energy worrying about it or stressing about it. You can't control people online and you can't make them think a certain way. You can't make them dispel their bad ideas about socialism or about SJW-ness and all the crap that they care about. You can't change their mind. Maybe you can offer some arguments here and there or some advice or whatever, or some data. Maybe you can do that, but generally it's not actually changing anybody's mind. If you actually look at the research, it Doesn't it work? So you let it go. It's not your responsibility. As the phrase goes, bees don't spend time explaining to flies that honey is better than shit. Some quote like that. It's not always easy. That's why we have to continually revisit, what can we control? What can we control? What can I control? What's within my control? How I respond. That's it. How I respond to everything around me. What actions I take based on that. Am I forcing this? Am I causing myself suffering because I'm not liking the outcome? Am I doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result, which is the definition of insanity? Or have I decided this is the best course of action? I'm going to execute this action, and then I let all of it leave my mind because it's all negative energy that is not serving me at all. And once you start visualizing yourself as that stoic, joyful, but also ruthless, if need be, man in your mind. Next time somebody cuts you off in traffic, visualize that man, how he would respond. If you find yourself getting huffy and upset or whatever, look outside yourself and ask yourself, what are you doing? That's cringe. Don't do that. Rise above that. Do not stoop to lower levels of consciousness. Start thinking in first principles. Cultivate that growth mindset. Destroy fixed mindset. And always ask yourself, what can I control? I can control my response, and I can control my acceptance of the external world. I can't accept the external world. I can accept the external world, regardless of whether I like it or not. That's all I can do. I can build things. I can try to make it better, but I have to detach myself from the outcome. So if people don't respond the way I want, if the world doesn't respond the way I want, if things don't change the way I want, I'm not going to suffer because I've done all that I can. Make sure you get on the newsletter, morebettermen.com. And you should also get the Better Human newsletter over at colin.coach. colin.coach. I will see you in the next one.